I wasn't even invited to the funeral. My own father's funeral. I found out he passed away from a Facebook post my cousin Jenna uploaded at 6:43 p.m. A blurry picture of his casket, a quote about life and death, and a location tag, Greenwood Hills Memorial Chapel. I blinked at the screen, thinking it had to be some kind of mistake. I hadn't gotten a single call, message, nothing. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts. Not even from my siblings. I called my older sister, Megan. She declined the call. And that was the moment it hit me like a brick wall. They did this on purpose. They buried my father like I didn't exist. But they forgot one thing. Dad left something only for me. A secret. And when I revealed it, everything changed. Have you ever been excluded from something that should have been yours by blood? Comment below if your own family ever made you feel like a stranger. My name is Lena Walker, and I was always Daddy's girl. Not in the spoiled, cliché way. I was his shadow, his sidekick, his partner in crime. If he was fixing the sprinkler system, I was right there with a wrench. If he was watching football on Sundays, I was curled next to him with my little Denver Broncos jersey, cheering like I knew the rules. My dad, Thomas Walker, wasn't perfect, but he was my person. He smelled like cedar and coffee. He always wore flannel, even in July. And he had this laugh that didn't match his gruff voice. Kind of high-pitched and contagious. Mom said I was the only one who could soften him. She used to joke that I was the only human being who could hand him bad news and still get a hug. I remember one day in 5th grade, I came home crying because a boy called me ugly with a crooked smile. Dad pulled me onto the porch swing and said, "Lena, anyone who can't handle a crooked smile doesn't deserve a front row seat to your kind heart." He said stuff like that all the time. Silly. Cheesy. But it stuck. Growing up in Tucson, Arizona, our family wasn't rich, but we had stability. Dad worked for the city water department for 32 years. Mom, Diane, stayed home with us kids until my youngest brother, Logan, started school, then worked part-time at a floral shop. There were 4 of us. Megan, the eldest, always organized, always polished. Chase, the golden boy athlete. Me, the weird middle child with dirt under my nails. And Logan, the baby with asthma, video games, and all the excuses in the world. We weren't dysfunctional, at least not outwardly. But looking back, I can see the cracks. Small, hairline fractures in how we were raised. Dad and I were close in a way that I now realize made the others uncomfortable. They didn't understand the language we spoke, mostly silence and side glances, bad puns and forehead kisses. When Mom died of a stroke 5 years ago, something in him broke. But for a while, it brought us even closer. We started weekly lunches at Millie's Diner. He'd order the same thing, turkey melt, extra mustard, black coffee. We'd talk about her, about the neighbors, about absolutely nothing. And yet those hours were everything. About a year before he passed, he started writing letters. He didn't tell me that. I just found out later. But I remember the day he looked at me, long and serious, and said, "If something ever happens, there's a blue folder in my garage in the toolbox drawer. The top left one. Don't let anyone else take it, all right?" I thought he was just being his usual prepared self. I nodded and smiled. Okay, apocalypse folder. Got it. We laughed. But now, that moment rings in my ears like a siren. Because that folder? That was the key to the secret. And the secret, the thing that blew my family apart, it wasn't just shocking. It was true. The shift started subtly, like a cold draft through a closed window. You feel it, but you can't prove it. After Mom died, things got awkward. Not just the grief, the logistics. Megan took the reins. She always does. Suddenly, she was calling family meetings without inviting me, making decisions about Dad's meds, about which hospice nurse to hire when his arthritis got bad, about what to do with Mom's jewelry. She'd text in the group chat, but strangely, mine would never ping. I found out later she made a new one, the real siblings chat. They didn't include me. At first, I blamed myself. I'd missed Chase's engagement party because I was helping Dad unclog a pipe that burst in his kitchen. Maybe they thought I didn't care about them anymore. But I did. I just prioritized Dad. He was declining faster than he let on. And no one seemed to notice or care. One weekend, Megan flew in from Dallas with her husband, and I stopped by to visit Dad. I brought his favorite, peach cobbler from Millie's. When I walked in, she looked me up and down and said,
"Oh,
"You're still coming around?" I blinked. "He's my father, Megan." She turned away.
sure."
"You've just always had your own relationship with him. We never quite fit into your little duo." That stung. It wasn't the words, it was the bitterness underneath. Like I had stolen something. Chase was even colder. He started accusing me of manipulating Dad. "Why do you keep taking him to those lunches?" he asked one night. "Is this some guilt trip thing, or are you just trying to secure your piece of the will?" I laughed, then realized he was dead serious. Logan, sweet but passive, never said anything. Just sat in the background playing games, avoiding eye contact. Then came the hospital scare. Dad slipped and fell in the bathroom. It wasn't major, just a sprained wrist, but they took him in for precaution. No one called me. I found out from Millie, the waitress at the diner. Millie, not my siblings. I rushed to the ER, breathless, heart racing, and Megan met me at the front doors like I was paparazzi. "You don't need to be here, Lena. We've got it covered." Covered? He was my father. He was our father. But something shifted that day. The way they closed ranks. The way they looked at me. Like I was a threat. Like I didn't belong. Dad noticed. Of course he did. One day, during one of our last lunches, he looked up from his turkey melt and said, "You know, some people resent what they never bothered to build." I asked what he meant, but he just shook his head and smiled sadly. I left the folder in the toolbox. Left instructions too. "Promise me something, Len." "Anything," I said. "If something ever happens, don't stay quiet." It was a Friday. I remember because I had just picked up Dad's prescription and some lemon pie he liked from that little spot on 3rd. I texted him. "On my way. Got your sugar fix?" No reply. Not unusual. He took naps mid-afternoon and sometimes left his phone in the fridge. But something felt off. An hour later, I pulled into the driveway and noticed the porch light blinking. The front door was locked. I knocked. No answer. I used my spare key. The house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that rings. I found him in his recliner, leaned slightly to the left, newspaper still on his chest, coffee cold. He looked like he had just dozed off. But his lips, they were too still. His chest wasn't moving. I touched his shoulder. Cold. I don't remember screaming. I just remember the 911 dispatcher trying to talk me through compressions while I sobbed into the phone, choking on my own breath. Paramedics came. One of them, an older guy named Kyle, placed a hand on my back and whispered, "He was gone for a while. There was nothing you could have done." But I had been just an hour away. 1 hour. At the hospital, they asked about next of kin. I gave them all our names, phone numbers. They let me sit with him for a bit, just 10 minutes. I held his hand. It was already stiffening. I whispered, "You promise me more time." His skin smelled like aftershave and fabric softener. There was still a stain on his flannel from the peach cobbler 2 days ago. I kissed his forehead and walked out into the setting sun. Completely empty. I called Megan first. No answer.
Called Chase.
Straight to voicemail. Tried Logan. It rang once, then went dead. That night, I sat in Dad's kitchen, lights off, heart shattered, replaying the last words he said to me. "If something happens, don't stay quiet." The next morning, I woke up to Facebook exploding. Jenna, our cousin, posted a picture of Dad's memorial service. He'd been cremated. The urn sat on a pedestal next to a floral arrangement Mom would have loved. The caption, "Rest easy, Uncle Tom. Beautiful farewell today. You were so loved."
Today.
Not next week. Not next month. They already had the funeral. I wasn't even invited. No call. No mention. No seat. No goodbye. I called Megan. This time she picked up. "You weren't supposed to find out that way," she said, cold and measured. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It was family only." I am family, I said, the rage pushing up through my throat. You made your choice, Lena. You distanced yourself. Don't act surprised now. I took care of him, I snapped. I fed him. I bathed him when he couldn't lift his arms. Where were you? She went silent for a moment, then said, He left everything to you, didn't he? That's when it clicked. They weren't grieving. They were angry. Angry that Dad gave me something they didn't understand. His trust. I remembered the folder. Raced to the garage, to the red Craftsman toolbox. Top left drawer. There it was, a blue folder with a yellow sticky note that read, For Lena, when it matters most. Inside were letters, copies of emails, old photos, a notarized statement, and a letter in his handwriting. They never wanted to face the truth. I couldn't protect you forever, but I can leave you with the truth. Use it if they ever turn against you. You'll know when it's time. I read every page that night, sobbing, shaking, realizing the weight I now carried. He trusted me with a secret that would burn the house down. The day after the funeral, I put on one of Dad's flannel shirts, the green and navy one he always wore in winter, and drove straight to Megan's house. I didn't call ahead. She lived in a gated community outside Scottsdale with her husband Ethan and her 2 kids who barely knew who I was anymore. I knocked. Hard. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, not shocked, not guilty, just irritated. Lena, she said flatly, you need to leave. No, I said, stepping inside. You need to sit down. Chase was already there. Logan too. Clearly a post-funeral debriefing. I pulled the blue folder out of my tote and placed it on the coffee table like a grenade. You didn't want me at the funeral. Fine. But you don't get to bury the truth with him. They all stared at it like it was radioactive. What is this? Chase asked. Dad's truth. The part you never cared to ask about. The part he gave me to protect. Megan crossed her arms. You're making a scene? No, I said. You made a choice. Now you get to hear the consequences. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. A letter from Dad to his lawyer. It detailed a financial account none of them knew about, money he had quietly saved for a scholarship fund in Mom's name. He put me as the trustee. Then the next, a notarized affidavit from a social worker. It confirmed that when I was a child, I had been the one to report a neighbor who had been hurting kids in our old neighborhood, something Dad had quietly helped cover up because Megan had been friends with the abuser's family. They had tried to silence me back then, gaslighting me, saying I misunderstood. But Dad knew. He always knew. He just didn't have the strength to fight everyone at once. You lied to me, I said, eyes burning. You made me think I was dramatic, that I was inventing things. You let me carry shame that didn't belong to me. Megan's face was pale now. Chase stood up, pacing. You don't get to drop this on us now, he growled. It's been years. This isn't about Dad. It's exactly about Dad, I snapped. He spent his final years watching you all turn on me, and still he trusted me with this. I handed them the last item, the will. Dad had left me the house, the savings, and guardianship over the memorial fund. They got heirlooms, letters, and nothing more. You always wanted control, Megan spat. You manipulated him when he was weak. I stood tall. I showed up when no one else did. I fed him, cleaned him, held his hand when he cried for Mom. That's not manipulation. That's love. The room was quiet for a long moment. Then Logan, who hadn't said much the entire time, looked at me and whispered, I remember you calling the police that day. I was there. You weren't lying. It broke something open. A moment of truth. No yelling. No throwing things. Just silence. Heavy and loud. I gathered the folder and stood. This isn't revenge, I said. It's accountability. I'm not the family's problem child. I was just never your puppet. And then I left. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt light. After the confrontation, I expected fire, explosions,
Rage.
What I got was silence. No texts, no calls, no apology, just a deafening, Gaping silence, the kind you can feel in your bones. 2 days later, I got an email from Megan. Not a phone call. An email. Lena, you've made your point. I hope you're happy. The family is in shambles, and now everyone's looking at me like I'm the villain. I just want to move on. Megan. I didn't reply. Because I didn't break the family. They did, when they decided my grief didn't matter. When they turned Dad's death into a power play. Neighbors began reaching out. Mrs. Hathaway, who lived across the street from my parents for 30 years, called and said, "Your father talked about you constantly. Every time I saw him walking Pepper, he'd say, 'Lena, fix the sink again. Lena brought me pie. Lena's too good to us.'" I cried in the driveway after that call. Because I realized he saw me. Even when my siblings erased me, he made sure someone knew I was there. Chase's wife, Danielle, texted me later that week. "For what it's worth, I always knew you were the one who actually loved him." And Logan? He started sending me links to grief resources.
Podcasts. Books.
One day he messaged, "If I had said something earlier, maybe things would be different." "I'm sorry." I told him, "It's not too late to start acting like a brother now." But not all responses were warm. My Aunt Kathy sent a message dripping with bitterness. "Your father's legacy was unity, not drama. You've made a mess of everything." I didn't answer, because sometimes silence is the most dignified reply. Then came the final gut punch. One morning, I was organizing Dad's paperwork when I found an old VHS tape labeled, "Lena, Just Us." I dusted off Mom's old player and sat down to watch. It was grainy, time-stamped 2002. A birthday party. I was turning 13. Everyone was in the backyard, music playing, laughter echoing. But the camera wasn't pointed at the crowd. It was focused on Dad and me sitting on the swing, eating cake. He looked into the lens and said, "This girl right here, she's my whole heart. If I go tomorrow, I'll be okay, because I know she'll carry the best parts of me." I broke down. The kind of sobbing that shreds your insides. Because it confirmed everything I needed to hear and everything I lost. In the weeks that followed, I went through phases. Anger. Sadness. Resentment. But underneath all of it, something else began to grow.
Clarity.
I started to see the truth, not just about them, but about me. That I didn't need their approval. That I wasn't the black sheep. I was the witness. The one who stayed present. The one who refused to rewrite history for the sake of comfort. I started therapy with a counselor named Dr. Renee, who specialized in grief and family estrangement. She told me something in our second session that stuck with me. The moment you choose truth over peace, you lose the illusion, but gain your power. That line played in my head like a mantra, because I wasn't grieving just my dad. I was grieving the family I thought I had. And slowly, painfully, I was learning to live without it. Grief doesn't end. It just changes shape. At first, it was a hurricane, loud, erratic, destructive. But after a while, it softened into something quieter, something I could carry. I started small. Took Dad's old flannel shirts and had them stitched into a memory quilt. Every square held a scent: detergent, cologne, sawdust. It became my blanket on hard nights. I planted yellow lilies in the backyard, Mom's favorite. They bloomed in early spring, like she was waving hello. I converted Dad's study into a writing room. Painted the walls sage green. Hung up photos, real ones, candid smiles, messy hair, grease-stained overalls. And above the desk, I framed the quote from the video. "If I go tomorrow, I'll be okay, because I know she'll carry the best parts of me." Therapy helped me untangle old knots. The guilt, the longing, the lies I swallowed as a child. I started journaling, started going on morning walks again, started making new memories, ones not shaped by grief. One day, Logan showed up at my door. He held a box of donuts and a trembling apology. "I've been a coward," he said, "but I want to do better. I want to know you again, for real this time." I let him in. We sat in Dad's kitchen and talked for hours. About video games. About the funeral. About our warped childhood. It didn't erase the past. but it cracked the door open for something new. I also met Sarah, a volunteer coordinator at the local grief support center. She had this gentle way of listening, like nothing I said was too much. I started helping her run weekly support groups for people who'd lost someone. People showed up carrying ashes, old love letters, baby shoes, worn-out hospital bracelets.
They talked, cried, healed.
And in their healing, I found my own. Eventually, I took the money Dad left me and created something with it. A scholarship fund in my mother's name. The Diane Walker Art and Kindness Grant. Every year, we'd award it to a high school senior who showed not just talent, but heart. The first recipient? A girl named Maya, who wrote poetry about her father's cancer battle. When I handed her the check at the small ceremony, she cried in my arms. Said, "No one in my family believed I could do anything with writing. But now I feel like I'm allowed to dream." That was the moment I knew I was honoring Dad in the most real way. Not by holding on to pain, but by paying forward the love he gave me. I still visit his grave. They moved his ashes to the local memorial park after everything came out. I placed a bench there, engraved with a line from his letter. Truth matters, even if no one claps when you speak it. Sometimes I just sit. I talk to him. About my day. About Logan.
About Maya.
I tell him I'm okay. Not whole. Not perfect. But okay. And I know wherever he is, he hears me. If you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for witnessing my story. For holding space for the messy parts, the parts that hurt, that were hidden, that needed to be told. Because that's the thing no one tells you about grief. It's not just about losing someone. It's about losing the illusion you were ever fully seen. It's about realizing who never showed up and who always did. I wasn't invited to my father's funeral. They thought that meant I didn't get to say goodbye. But they were wrong. Because goodbyes don't happen in a church or in a black dress. They happen in memories, in the quiet, in the truth. And sometimes the most powerful goodbye is the one that says, "I forgive you, but I'll never forget what you taught me," even in silence. If you've ever been left out of your own story, if your grief was minimized, if your truth made people uncomfortable, I see you. You're not alone. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when everything's falling apart. The ones who don't need proof to believe your pain. The ones who hand you a flashlight when your world goes dark. I want to ask you something sincerely. Have you ever felt erased by your own family? If you have, drop a broken heart in the comments. Or better, tell your story. This space is yours too. Your voice matters. Your grief is real. And your healing? It's possible. Even if they never say sorry. If this story moved you, please like the video. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories, raw, honest, and human. And share this with someone who needs to know that truth is still sacred. Because sometimes the only way to heal is to speak. And sometimes the only way to honor the ones we've lost is to finally choose ourselves.